Alright, boils and ghouls, I'm back. We're good. Gremlins. Since I'm going to be watching Gremlins 2 with Gareth tomorrow on Video Tasties, figured I haven't done a video on Gremlins. I did a watch with Gareth last year. So I said this would be nice to have a little tie-in lead up into Gremlins 2. So this is a movie I remember seeing very, very young. And I say all the time that not a lot scared me. Even as a kid, really, watching horror movies. But the ending narration in this, with, what the hell's his name? With, Hoyt Axton, the father, when he gives his little monologue at the end, it says, check under the bed and in the closet, there might be a gremlin in your house, and the music kicks in by Jerry Goldsmith, which the score is phenomenal in this movie. So good. It really sounds just like what you would think a bunch of gremlins causing havoc would sound like. But that little ending monologue from him, that used to scare me, man, because I used to check in that closet and there was never a gremlin. Now, this was, of course, directed by Joe Dante, and we had Steven Spielberg as producer. So, it's another one of those movies, same with Poltergeist, that Spielberg, as a producer, or just being involved in any way, kind of just pushes it towards a more family-friendly film, because the original script was a lot darker for this movie, and I really wish we could have seen that, a much darker Gremlins. I mean, I think the directing's fantastic in this movie, and I'm very hit or miss with Dante. I think he has just as many bad films as he has good films. So, I mean, I'm not the biggest Joe Dante fan. This is probably his best movie, honestly, this or The Howling. But I'd say probably this. So, let's deep dive into Gremlins. For anyone who hasn't seen, come on, has anyone not seen Gremlins at this point in their life? Really? Plot synopsis for Gremlins. We got this guy, Mr. Peltzer. He's an inventor. Not a fucking good one, I might add. But he's in Chinatown, and he ends up finding this little mystical Chinese shop ran by a mystical Chinese man. And he happens to have this little creature called a Mogwai. And they call him Gizmo. He's an adorable little thing. Oh, you love him as soon as you see Gizmo in this movie. And he just has to have it. Mystical Chinese man, he says, no, cannot have. Americans suck. He doesn't say that exactly, but it's almost what he says. But apparently, mystical Chinese man and his grandson, they need money, so the grandson ends up taking the Mogwai. He meets Mr. Peltzer right out back, gives him the Mogwai, and he tells him the 3 important rules for dealing with this Mogwai. Things you cannot break, which is it can't be exposed to bright light, can't get wet, and don't ever feed it after midnight. And these people break all 3 of them very fast in this movie. They should not have a Mogwai. If you came across this Mogwai, wouldn't you want to do a little more research on what the fuck this is that you have? No one's ever seen anything like this. So wouldn't you want to go to a library? There's no internet then. Go to a library, look it up, see if you can identify this species of animal, in any way, overtaking just the word of a mystical Chinese man. Hoyt Axton's great in this movie, and I love his whole character, and I love how he has all these inventions that they seem cool, his little bathroom buddy that has a shaving kit and toothbrush and all that. Cool. But he just can't get any of these things to work. He doesn't have one working invention in this whole movie, right? I can't remember one, because then they show the wife using a bunch of his stuff in the kitchen and none of that works. So I can't think of one thing that he invented that actually works with 100% consistency every single time. But he's got great ideas, so stay at it, Mr. Peltzer. The fact that he's pitching the bathroom buddy, and he's saying, oh, you're on a plane, you forgot to, brush your teeth. You got a bad case of dragon breath, he says to mystical Chinese man. And then he looks down to see the dragon, he just corrects himself. It's bad breath. That's hilarious. And did I really hear him offer him $100 for that Mogwai? And then the grandson accepted that money? $100 for a mythical creature that nobody's ever seen before? That seems low. $100, man. Mr. Peltzer's a robber. Zach Galligan in this is good. I like him in the sequel. I like him in Waxwork. A few other things. He's not a great actor or anything. Phoebe Cates is gorgeous in this movie. Her whole infamous Santa story about her dad going down the chimney. Jesus, what a way to just really bring down a Christmas mood. Infamous scene though. She's great in this. Everybody in this movie. The old bitch who plays what's her name? She gets catapulted out of the house later in that hilarious scene. I can't not crack up every single time that happens. I'm looking forward to it now, actually. Also, let's just get out of the way the thing everyone thinks of with this movie, with the rules. Feed them after midnight. What if you're on a plane and you're going back time zones and it's really 11 p.m. but then you go ahead of time, it's midnight and then they eat. Is it all right? Are they going to turn? Are they not? I don't think anybody who worked on this movie really put any thought into any of that, so we're just going to ignore it. I always forget until I rewatch it that we have Jonathan Banks in here as one of the police officers later on, who went on to... He's been in so many things, but I mean, he's most well known now for Mike from Breaking Bad, which what a badass character, one of the greatest shows of all time. But he plays one of the cops. Every time I see this, it's, hey, this is young Mike. Screw it. Again with the rules. When the Gremlins later, after they turn, right, they can still multiply with water, but yet they're hopping all over the snow and they're running all throughout the snow, all throughout town. Like, shouldn't they be multiplying like horny baboons? Like, all over the place, but that never happened, so that doesn't make any sense. We have the great Dick Miller as Mr. Futterman. Isn't the old woman Dougal or McDougal or something? I can't believe I can't remember her name. Also, according to the credits, this was written by Chris Columbus. So Christopher Columbus got to the New World and he wrote Gremlins. Deagle. That's what the old bitch's name is. It's Mrs. Deagle. I was close. Dougal, McDougal. I knew it was something with a D. And just the fact of how mean she is to Barney, the dog. I love that dog. What a beautiful dog. And she's such a... Oh, I hate that woman. So Mrs. Deagle's known as the bitch of the town. Like, everybody knows that this is just a miserable woman. So then why does this old guy, who's probably lived here his whole life and knows her very well, even bother going up to her and saying, "Hi, Mrs. Deagle, how you doing today?" and then gets chewed out by her? Doesn't he know better? I wonder how much they paid for that Burger King product placement. They go a little overboard with the conversation Mrs. Deagle's having with the mom with her kid, and she's saying they're not getting paid for 2 weeks and can't you talk to whatever, and they're in financial struggle. And then when she leaves after saying, like, it's not my job to care about, like, deadbeats, it's to make money, she walks away, and then the kid says to the mom, "Mom, I'm hungry," and she says, "I know, I am too, honey." They can't afford anything to eat. Anything. There's nothing in their house. Like, come on. That's a little over the top. Point of the whole bank scene, Ms. Deagle's a bitch. This movie's weird. Like, I always forget there's a lot of people in this until I rewatch it. So we got Judge Reinhold.
My name is Judge.
He's right, his name is Judge now. Corey Feldman's in this. Like, I don't know why I forget these people are in this movie. See, like that, the Peltzer egg machine. It just seems like a lot more work. He has all the eggs on like a little machine, and then the bird comes down and cracks it, and it's supposed to fall into like a bowl, but all the shells fall in with it. Like, what? It wouldn't be so much easier just to take the egg and crack it into the bowl? I don't know. All his inventions don't make any sense. So Mr. Peltzer returns home from his business trip with a nice little gift-wrapped Gizmo in his box, which, I mean, they can't drink water because they can't get wet, so let's assume they don't follow the same laws that human bodies do. But, like, can they suffocate in there? Can he breathe in the box? Like, wouldn't it be real morbid if he opens the box here after, like, taking the gift wrap off and everything, and Gizmo's just dead inside from lack of oxygen? But fortunately, that's not what happens, and Gizmo comes out and we get our first little look at him. The puppet work is great in this movie. Like, all the effects work is really, really good. The Gremlins, how they move around, all of that is fantastic. Then he tells the family the 3 simple rules that they go ahead and break in the next day or two. But again, no one in this family takes a look at this thing and says, "What the hell is this?" Like, I've never heard or seen one of these ever. And, like, no, they don't seem shocked or anything. And I'm talking immediately, because as soon as he picks up Gizmo, and then the mom says, "Picture time," and she flashes the bright light in his eyes, and he freaks out. He didn't even get to the rules, and they already broke one. These people should never have a Mogwai. It's a shame that Gizmo ended up with such terrible people. Billy playing the keyboard, and then Gizmo singing the pitch, that's all adorable. That's great stuff. Alright, I mean, if anyone thought this wasn't going to be half arguing about the rules of the Gremlins, I don't know what to tell you. If you can't feed them after midnight, so then, like, when does okay time to feed them start? Is it like 5 a.m., 6 a.m.? Like, how do you know? Like, how does this rule make sense? I guess until they wake up the next morning? That would be, like, the most, I guess, like, easy to digest answer. Whenever they fall asleep, when they wake up, then you can feed them. But if they're up after midnight, do not feed them. Once they fall asleep, they wake up, you're good. I think we could settle on that, right? Let's move on to the rest of the movie. And then the orange machine, that don't work either. So, like, why keep any of his inventions around if they don't do anything and they suck? I don't get it. Thank you, Corey Feldman. We get a genius line from him. He comes over, he sees the mess of the orange juice. He says, "You should just buy it in cartons. It's easier." Genius. He's the voice of reason in this house. So Billy is showing Gizmo to Corey Feldman, and he knocks over the paintbrush with the water, and then the cotton balls multiply and sprout off of Gizmo. Could somebody please call Mogwai Protective Services on this family? Because they're going to kill this thing. They already broke 2 rules in less than a day. Call MPS now. I would also be much more frightened than they are, just staring at these little balls growing and stuff. I'd be running away, like, as far as possible. But then you think to yourself, wait, you just get these things wet and they multiply? Yeah, we are gonna make mad money. And that's the first thing the dad thinks of too. Billy ends up bringing one of the new I almost said Gizmo, new Mogwai to his science teacher, and we get the whole scene when he gets killed and he gets stabbed with the needle. That was supposed to be a much more, like, graphic scene, like in the original script. It's fine. And then at the same time, we have Stripe, we see for the first time as a Mogwai before he becomes a Gremlin. Then we get the whole speech from Dick Miller about the Gremlins in World War II, and they were supposedly these little things that would fuck with plane engines and cause chaos. That's cool. I love him in anything, but his whole little speech there is great. Let me say this. The whole scene where they're eating chicken, and, like, the close-up shots of all the Mogwai eating the chicken and tearing it apart, that's great. That is great effects work. Like, ever since I was a kid and saw that, it kind of grossed me out, because it looks like they're really chomping down on that chicken. It really is effective. So bravo with that whole scene. But sneaky Stripe, he unplugged the clock. So it was after midnight. Now they're fed, and now they're turned into cocoon creatures waiting to hatch into the infamous Gremlins. And again, way too fucking calm. They come up, "Mom, can you come up here, please, to look at this?" That's it. She comes up, she looks. It's like, yo, you got a pod people situation going on in your room. These people just don't care. Remote controlled phone, that shit don't work. We see that hungry mom again with the one with her son from earlier. I mean, I wonder if she's eaten since then. I hope she has. Same thing with the effects when they start hatching out of the cocoons, and, like, the fog for some reason is, like, coming out and stuff. All of that looks fantastic. Like, it still holds up to this day. The "Do You Hear What I Hear" song for the whole scene with the mom, what a great choice of music. Like, what a great song choice. Whatever that big silver dish that, like, chop shit up is that Peltzer invented, at least it does work at eviscerating a gremlin. Because that all looks great too, with the gremlin green blood flying all over the kitchen. Yeah, there's so many classic moments in this, with the microwave that explodes the gremlin, the one that's in the Christmas tree when she gets attacked. All of this is just classic, man. Like, I have so much nostalgia for this movie, and I'm sure a lot of us do. Billy comes home, rescues his mom, decapitates the gremlin, looks great as the head's, like, melting in the fire. All that's awesome. And then Stripe takes off out into the snow. So again, there should be like a quintillion amount of gremlins in the next half hour or so in this town, if we go by the logic that we're told in this movie. Let's just say they spilt a little bit of water earlier, and that made what? 6 gremlins, something like that. So let's say every step that Stripe takes produces about 5 gremlins. Let's say he takes 1,000 steps. You got about 5,000 gremlins already. Whatever, this has nothing to do with anything. I don't care if it looks dated, but that whole scene when Stripe's walking down the street, and then all the gremlins are behind him, and they're all walking towards the camera, that's such an iconic shot. That is such a great shot. It looks a little bit dated, but it still looks fantastic. Then Stripe decides to go skinny dipping and fucks everything up and conjures a whole bunch of gremlins that run amok all over town. Remember TV antennas? This might be my favorite scene in the movie, with Dick Miller and his wife, and they get in the cab, the gremlins, and they rev it up and they go right through the house, and Dick Miller's looking, he's just Dick Miller, I don't remember his name, Fullerman or Futterman or something like that. He's looking, he's screaming, "There's a real gremlin in my cab," and the music kicks in for the real first time, like the actual full theme. Probably the best scene in the movie. Every single time. Peltzer, smokeless ashtray, shit don't work either. Alright, what rivals that scene I was just talking about with Dick Miller when they get killed for best scene in the movie? The whole bar scene. With all the gremlins at the bar, and the female gremlin, and all of that. I mean, I'd have to put that over the other scene. But this whole scene is just brilliant. I mean, let's think of the timeline here. The teacher was killed, it was still daylight out. So they started wreaking havoc all over town, let's say around dusk. It seems like a few hours into the night now, maybe 9, 10 at night. You're telling me the National Guard hasn't been called? Like backup? Like the state police? Nothing. It's just Mike from Breaking Bad and the sheriff. That's all that we have here to help these people. You don't want to live in this town. And then, yeah, we get the whole reason that Phoebe Cates' character hates Christmas, which is just tragically hilarious. Just to put a damper on everything. I mean, they already got enough to deal with. They got little gremlins running amok all over town. Do we really need to bring the mood down anymore with that story? But I got a conscience. So my condolences, my heart goes out to the fake family of the fake character here. Then we just have another just iconic scene, which I'm afraid to even say the song or anything because it's Disney. But them in the theater singing along to Hi-Ho, all of that is fantastic. I mean, there's such creativity in this movie, and you could see why this inspired a whole bunch of movies after this with little critters and stuff like Critters and Ghoulies, Munchies. There's so many of them that came after Gremlins. Or well, Ghoulies we talked about in that video was like coming out right at the same time, but this started like a whole little subgenre, and you can see why. There's some great ideas here, and you can do crazy things with this whole premise here, with these ideas, with these Gremlins, and we see that to the 10th degree in Gremlins 2, the new batch. Then we get the final showdown with Stripe in the hardware store with Billy and Gizmo, which Gizmo's driving the car, but he can turn it with the wheel, but that doesn't work at all with that type of car. How is he able to steer the wheel and it actually turns the car? None of that makes sense. The whole scene with the chainsaw with Stripe taking forever to cut through the baseball bat, that's insanity too. None of this matters, and then he ends up getting wet again, and great effects too, again, with the fountain bubbling and all that, the lighting, all that looks great. Or how Stripe's even picking up a chainsaw or any of that. Stripe also seems to have amazing precision and accuracy with not just a crossbow, but also an actual gun. And then just the whole disintegration of Stripe with the light coming in and him melting apart, all of that is just fantastic looking. Again, the effects in this movie are very underrated, I feel. When movies that get brought up for their effects work, I feel like this movie should be brought up more often. Like, I don't know, on this rewatch, they really stood out to me more. There's excellent effects work in this movie, but they end up saving the day. Stripe's done. Then, I guess Child Protective Services from Mogwai got contacted, and they got a hold of the mystical Chinese man, because he comes and he takes Gizmo the fuck away from them after all this just happened in like a few days. There's no one's ever getting a Mogwai again, like from this Chinese man or from any mystical Chinese guy. But it's heartbreaking, isn't it? When you see Billy sing goodbye, bye, Billy. Doesn't sound like that, but whatever. It's heartbreaking. You don't want him to lose his little buddy. And luckily, there's the Gremlins 2, the new batch, and we'll be watching that tomorrow. And then mythical Chinese man walks off, and we get the narration by Hoyt Axton. And seriously, just now when I heard it, chills down my spine. Like, that's how ingrained that is to my childhood. That as soon as he says, like, there might be a gremlin in your house, and the music kicks in, epic movie. Like, Gremlins, who doesn't love this movie? I don't really know anyone that I've ever talked to in my life who says, I hate Gremlins. So, let me know if you hate Gremlins for some reason. Let's talk about it. Yeah, tomorrow we will be watching the sequel on Video Tasty's channel at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Alright guys, wherever you're from, hope you're having a good morning, afternoon, or night. I will talk to you soon. Take care, everybody.